Hey y'all, welcome back to Innovation with Sesi, where we talk all things faith, finance, and fitness. So today, I want to touch on a topic that is very close to my heart, and that is entrepreneurship, but from the perspective of side hustles and startups. We'll talk more about startups later as we go down the line, but I just wanted to touch on side hustles because I think there's like this trend, or it's an expected thing that when people are in their 20s or their 30s, they're looking for ways to supplement their income or looking for ways to find another stream of income that could either be sustainable or it could be temporary and short term. And in my case, I've found that a lot of people around me, a lot of young folks, my peers, are just hopping. Like it's like side hustle hopping. One month they're doing this, the next month they're doing that. It's like they go through like six, five startups a year. And I'm like, what's going on? Are we just not consistent? Is it like what is the problem? What is the issue? And so, long story short, I've been in the side hustle industry probably since I was like 15, but it started off as a hobby. And that's probably like, remember that. It started off as a hobby. And that's also very important when it comes to side hustling. A lot of times I'm finding that people are failing at side hustles because it's more of a profit based thing that they're doing. They're just trying to get money or make money as much as possible, which is nothing wrong with wanting financial freedom. But the problem is sustaining something, it has to be driven by passion, it has to be driven by motivation. And yeah, so I started tutoring when I was like 15 at rural schools back in South Africa in my home village. So I would come home during school breaks, and my mom was a high school teacher, and she would basically just have me teach her class when I was there, and I would help out other teachers, so whether it be physics and chemistry and math and English and all kinds of things. I really particularly enjoyed tutoring English, especially in the rural schools, because a lot of the kids spoke the native language, which was, for me, is Zulu. And so they weren't necessarily familiar with the literature and all of that. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. And that's why I did it for like 2 or 3 years for free, basically. I didn't even know that I could make it a side hustle. But honestly, now that I look back, I couldn't have really charged those kids. But it really did ignite a passion in me. I knew that I love to teach, I love to coach, and like I love to just guide people through the process of understanding something. So when I came to college was when academic tutoring became a side hustle for me, and it actually financed my first car, right? Crazy. But I realized that for me, people would ask me like, well, how come you've been always successful at your side hustles, or how come you've been consistent at your side hustles? Because after tutoring, I basically just went into fitness or went into coaching, which is not really that different from tutoring. It's just a different setting. But the reason was I just had really had enough of academia. I mean, I enjoy academia, but I just was just like, I think it's time to make a move. I've been doing this for years now. And I was also in a point where I needed growth in a different way. And so that's why I went into personal training. But it's also a funny story because once I stopped tutoring, I was washing dishes one day in between this transition, and I thought, what can I do and what can I do well? Like it's a crazy thought, but it was just like, what can I do that I can make money off, but I know that only I can do well that way? And immediately it came to my mind, like coaching. Why? Because I had this track background, I had this understanding and all this knowledge I had accumulated as a track athlete, but also I love fitness. I love being in the space, in the health space. I loved watching people achieve their health goals and like all of that. So I crunched my studies into literally 3 weeks of studying for my personal training exam. And boom, now it became, another side hustle. And meanwhile, tutoring was really great for me. I think it was also one of those things like side hustles are side hustles for a reason. Some people will turn side hustles into, $1 million companies or, six-figure companies. That's great. Good for you. Some people, it's just to finance a particular season in their life, and you might find that it works for you, but it doesn't work for you. But it's definitely a red flag if you have a side hustle that's like, oh, okay, I'm doing this week or these 4 weeks, and then next month I see you, and you're like, oh yeah, that didn't work out. I'm doing this, and then I see you 6 months again. And it's like, oh yeah, and then I'm like, bro, is it a side hustle industry issue or is it your issue? And so I wanted to talk about that because there are side hustles that I wouldn't say I've tried, but I've like peeped. I've done my research on them because I was like, should I do this? And then I realized it's not my personality. Like, I remember at one point I was considering freelancing for writing. And I realized as much as I love writing and I'm really good at it, it just didn't match my brand personality. Like that particular side hustle did not wouldn't necessarily go with my character and like all of that. So it's also important to understand that. But the biggest thing that I found is the issue with side for a lot of people why their side hustle fails is the business model. They have crappy business models. Like, have you thought through how you're gonna make money? Have you thought through the economic model? Like, how are you going to make money? Like what are your, startup costs, your break even, your product market fit? It's just like, you can't just do something just because you've thought of it, but it's like, is there anybody out there that wants it? Like you can't, like, for instance, I think about my neighborhood. I live in a neighborhood that's predominantly retired people. So if I try to be a babysitter in this neighborhood, who exactly is gonna want my services? Like, it's not gonna work. But I could be a dog sitter in my neighborhood because everybody here almost has a dog, right? So you gotta think about your product market fit and things like that. But another big thing is passion. I am a strong believer, and it's probably controversial. Like, I feel like side hustles should borderline hobbies. If it's something that you can't really do if you're not paid for, it's kind of hard to not only sustain but to scale. Like, you really have to enjoy it. Because when you talk about it to other people, especially if it involves human interaction, people have to see that you're passionate about this and that you want to be here, you want to do it. But if you make it sound like a chore, you make it sound like it's mentally and physically taxing, I wouldn't really buy into the idea. I wouldn't buy into your vision. So that's a big component of it. And then I think another big thing is to understand that side hustles are really kind of, they are to supplement or be an additional stream of income. So you're already probably working a loaded full, week of like 40 hours or whatever the case may be. And you're trying to make time and have energy for this side thing that you're doing. And you know what's crazy? I've found that a lot of people are doing side hustles that they actually wish that they could do that for the rest of their life. Like that's their dream, but they're doing it as a side hustle. Meanwhile, the job that they work for like 40 hours is really just to pay the bills. And that's kind of sad, but it's the situation that a lot of people and a lot of us are living in and operating in. And I think another thing that I've noticed is just priorities. Like we can't, and I mentioned earlier, like we can't be side hustle hoppers. You got to give it enough time. I think this generation is very big on being, we're big on being drive through people. Like we just want it now and we want it fast. And so there's not consistency or just intentionality behind our actions and just trying to see it through and giving it time. If it doesn't work immediately, we want to quit. And it's like, you're not really going to learn anything from that. You have to be consistent with it. You have to give it time. So that's also another big component. I know side hustles are normally associated with informal stuff, dog sitting, babysitting, freelancing, like whatever that is. But if you really truly mean to scale whatever the side hustle may be, you have to be big on research. You have to be like, somehow it may not be tangible numbers from a data website that's been published, but if you're doing a small side hustle in your neighborhood, like, put yourself out there, find out whether or not this is a desirable product that could go beyond just what you're doing right now, right? And so for me, coming back to the personal training thing, I started off as a personal trainer at the University of Arizona while I was a student, and that was great. And in terms of now that I'm scaling, can't believe I'm saying this out loud, but I'm really proud of myself because I think it's one of those things that you look at side hustles and then you think, will this ever be bigger than it is now? So, to let you in on a little bit of insight, I've decided to scale my personal training skills and just my personal training business and actually turn it into an independent venture. Because before I was working for the school, I was working for the gym, and now I'm doing my own thing that's also a different style. It's an in home personal training business where I basically cater to the elderly and seniors. Going back, remember I said that my community is mostly adults, it's mostly senior citizens, right? So it makes sense that they would be my target audience. This part of town is mostly retired people. So yeah, I had to think about that and be like, hey, who do I want to serve and why? And how would I benefit from it and how would they benefit from it? Luckily, because I love it, passion, and because I understand the business model behind it, because I've done my research, I've been in the industry, and I have, a track record of how many clients I've trained over the years. So I know that. But now trying it in a different facility, which is where the part comes in. That's the scaling portion of it. And that's obviously the daring, risky part of me deciding to move away from the commercial gym or the brick and mortar structure to now doing it in a non traditional, quote unquote, unconventional way. But I'm excited about it. I'm excited about it. So if you have an entrepreneurial spirit, or you are an entrepreneur and you're already doing some things, I'll talk about more some of my ventures later down the line of what I'm doing and why. I want you to really think through whatever side hustle you're currently doing or whatever side hustle you're planning to do, because you don't want to invest time and effort into something that, one, you're not really seeing the future of it, or you're not passionate about it, and you end up being burnt out, or it's just mentally and physically taxing. Apart from that, book recommendation for the week. This one, y'all, was life changing. I probably read through this book like 4 or 5 hours. It was awesome. It is Black Founder by Stacey Spikes. And all I have to say is, if you are an entrepreneur, especially if you're an entrepreneur of color, this is definitely a must read book, because the first half of the book is really relatable to some of the things that we experience, but from the last half of the book, what I really got out of it was just the startup process of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So get the book and try it out for yourself. Let me know in the comment section how you like that. And apart from that, like, share, and subscribe. Stay fit, be good with your finances, and keep up the faith. Bye, y'all.